Hey, I'm Todd Jarrett, and welcome to your purchase of your Staccato 2011. I want to go over some things today with the firearm to let you know what you actually get in your case when you purchase your firearm. Most important is the operating manual that comes with every single gun. It's very important to read that and understand what your gun is all about. You notice inside the case there's going to be an assortment of tools that we're going to give you for everything from your fiber optic sights to Loctite in certain areas, but that's in the manual. Also, you're going to get a lock here to make sure that you lock up your firearm when you're not using it. So once the firearm is out, well, we need to be able to learn how to disassemble the firearm, but most important, how to be able to maintenance it correctly and reassemble it. So let's get started. Okay, let's take a look at the barrel systems in the Staccatos. Exception of the Staccato R, the entire line will come with a bull barrel assembly, allowing us to give us great machining capabilities for great tolerances and accuracy on it. Gives us a little extra weight out there for allowing us the gun to get back on the target a little quicker. The Staccato R is a standard 1911 version barrel assembly with the bushing and the barrel on it. So you get extreme accuracy out of both of the systems. Let's take a look at the two different types of recoil systems you will see in the Staccato. So the Staccato line on the C, the C2, and the C Duo, you will find that you will get a dual spring system. It comes with a tool to be able to lock this in, which we'll talk about in disassembly in a minute. But if we take a look at the remaining line of the Staccatos, you'll notice that these are called a toolless guide rod system. The toolless guide rod system allows you to be able to maintain that cap and control that so it doesn't go flying, and it's much easier to take it apart. And we'll talk about this in a disassembly also. So as this goes forward, we'll notice that we can push this down, pushing that lever forward, allowing that spring to be captured correctly and much easier for reassembly. Let's move on to taking apart a C2. Okay, let's disassemble the C2. First, before we get started, we want to make sure that we take out the magazine and we want to make sure the gun is clear prior to disassembly. First thing I like to do is I like to inspect the gun to make sure that all of my screws are nice and tight, my fiber optic is nice and tight in the gun, and my sights have not loosened up. For some reason, if you need to make an adjustment with your back sights, whether it be an adjustable sights with some of the Staccato line or a fixed sights, you can move your back sights with the tools that comes with that. And you can look in your operating manual to determine how to do that correctly. So now, if we're going to disassemble, we have a safe gun. Now we want to disassemble the gun. So what we want to do now is we want to make sure that I like to lock the slide back to the rear first to take a look at it. But for easy purposes of taking the slide stop out, you notice I will put my finger right there on the actual slide stop itself on the back side of it. This is called the slide stop, locked into the slide area. So I'm going to put my thumb inside of the guard here, and I'm going to capture the slide from moving down. So I'm going to move the slide stop down to the second notch, which is a slight oval that is actually built in the slide. So with that being there, I can take a small punch and I can come to the back side and I can push that through, taking the slide stop out of the gun. Now I can disassemble the slide off of the frame itself. Once that's been taken off, I'll notice that I need to be able to take my guide rod system out of here. And what we need to be able to do is I will take my thumb and put in behind the link where the link is sitting, and I will take it and I will push that forward, and I'm going to take a tool that's provided for you in the kit, and we're going to push this and lock it in place. By doing this, it allows it to capture the spring correctly to be able to take it out for disassembly and cleaning purposes. Now the barrel, the link must go forward in order to be able the barrel to come out and come through that part of the slide. Once I have disassembled this part of it correctly here, I want to make sure that I now inspect to make sure if I don't have any carbon built up. I want to be able to go here and clean and maintenance all of this and use proper care. I typically, the Hoppies line is what we use here at the Staccato 2011 factory. And you'll notice that you will get some of those in your cases also. There are several different ways that we can actually clean depending on heavy use. We can spray to make sure we get into the lug areas, which is going to be very important to be able to clean the pistol. Make sure all of our areas that are clean of debris. We want to be able to brush the breech face off to make sure all of these areas are nice and clean. When I look in the barrel, I want to make sure that depending on how much use I'm using, but a good copper fouling system will allow me to be able to get a nice cleaning brush in by using some of the material to be able to clean that barrel properly each and every time. I also want to make sure that I'm cleaning the actual lug area and any debris that may pop up around the link area, and especially underneath the barrel where this locks in underneath the frame area. It's going to be very important. You're going to see a lot of carbon built up in this area from heavy usage. So once this has been cleaned off, and we want to make sure that we polish and knock off all debris that is on the barrel surfaces and on the end, and once that's nice and clean, we want to make sure that now we take a look at the frame area. I like to be able to take a frame area and just basically wipe everything down to start to make sure to see how much debris I have going. I like to go right through the gun and make sure that everything is cleaned off properly underneath the gun. I'm doing a quick one for you guys, but make sure that you spend the extra time to get all the debris out, in the lug area, where the barrel locks in and where the link comes in. And I want to make sure that all of my rails are nice and clean on there, and make sure that everything is nice and clean, because if this is my carry gun, I want to make sure I'm cleaning everything properly, because you get a lot of dust and debris by carrying it for concealed carry or my buddies in law enforcement. So when it comes down to some type of lubricant I'm going to use, Hoppy's has about 3 different versions that I use. Typically, there are ones that I do not use, which is the gun grease. If you're putting gun grease into your lug and slide area, this stuff has a very thick viscosity. I do not recommend this for your pistols. This is more recommended for bolt guns and some heavy use firearms, but not in the Staccato line. The precision oil, which is my favorite, that I like to be able to use, is a very thin viscosity, and what I like about it is almost like water, but it actually works as a great protectant of learning and understanding that carbon does not build up on it in those areas at all. Now, if I want to look at some thicker viscosity gives me a little bit more lubricant, and so I can actually put that into the lug area. And when I'm doing it, I like to have, because this is where all the heat and everything is actually in the firearm itself. So a lot of times I will put a couple drops of the heavy stuff, and I will make sure that I will put it on here, but I don't like to put a lot if I'm going to be using this as my concealed carry gun. My competition guns are a little bit different. Now, when it comes to the actual Recoil Master spring system, you can actually take this apart, and the more you disassemble your gun, the easier it will become. So once I take off the tool off of here, and I can pull the spring system off here, this allows me to actually clean and wipe any debris or any carbon that may have built up on there. I go to put it back in. I want to make sure that I do all this correctly. And I like to use just a little bit of light oil. Nothing heavy on the spring. This is my favorite. So this allows me to just give me a little bit of lubricant. So I'm going to drive this guy down on here. And you're going to find, yeah, it's a little tight spring to start off with to be able to get that in there. Once you become more and more familiar with the firearm, you'll find that it'll be easier to put this back together. Now I go to reassemble the firearm. I do want to put some on the rails area, okay? I like to put a couple drops here or there just to make sure that I do have some lubricant that are on the rails itself. Not a real heavy amount, just a nice smooth amount So now I'm going to put the barrel assembly back in. I want to make sure that the link is forward. And with the link being forward and going in front of the barrel, you're going to find out that it needs to go all the way to the end and lock in place correctly. So you're going to need to adjust that to drop into the actual lugs that are in the barrel. So that's forward in there, and that's going, we're going to pull the link back, which goes through the slide stop a little right now, and we're going now to reassemble. You're going to notice that there's going to be a small curve that needs to be set right underneath the barrel area. This does not work if it's on the top. It needs to go on the very, very bottom of this little cutout here. So you make sure that that bottom piece goes in there correctly and it's not turned upside down. So it should go correctly there. Moving this forward, okay, we're going to take our thumb and grab the slide. We're going to push this forward, and now we're going to take off the actual tool that actually holds that in place, allowing this to come forward. So now the tough part comes for most people when it comes to 1911s or 2011 style guns, is that we need to be able to move the link forward to make sure that the slide stop now can travel through correctly and be able to pick up once we put it on the frame. So what I like to do is I like to be able to make sure that my link is in a downward position, and I'm going to now reassemble the frame onto the slide area. Once I have this, I'm actually going to look in here, and this is where my little punch comes back into play, and I want to move that around until I can get those lined up correctly in order to put the slide stop into the gun. Now, I'm not going to lock it to the rear yet because I want you to understand that I put it back together correctly. So if the slide is going forward in battery and everything is lining up correctly here, you'll probably say that I've got that part correct into the gun. So now what we're going to do is going to go back and we're going to move our thumb into the trigger guard and we're going to grab the slide. And what we're going to do now is we're going to move the slide stop. And we're going to move this guy because I'm sitting up in there correctly. And I'm going to move this down and move it back into that second notch that's sitting there. And I'm going to push that down. I'm actually going to just push it forward to make sure that it goes through that little circle area. That allows the gun to go back in battery correctly and make sure that the slide is working. And I can move the safeties up and down to make sure that the gun is ready for use and ready for duty.